It's official, Dune Part 2 is a massive box office hit. So I thought it might be interesting to look back 40 years to the last version of Dune, directed by David Lynch. This was regarded as a massive flop. But why did that one fail where Villeneuve's versions succeeded? And are there any ways that it was better? The first thing you notice about Lynch's Dune is that it starts with an absolutely massive amount of exposition. First there's a voiceover by the Princess Irulan, then there's a report from the Guild, then Paul's computer spouts out another chunk. It's absolutely relentless, and anybody coming to the material fresh would likely be overwhelmed. Villeneuve's version started with the characters and lets you figure out the wider universe from there, which is probably the better way to do it. The first proper scene is certainly spectacular, as you get the Space Guild navigator visiting the Emperor's court. There is nothing like this in the new version. It's deeply weird and very Lynchian. But it does lay out the entire basis for the story, so it is essential for the plot. In Villeneuve's version, the Emperor doesn't even appear until Part 2, which gives the story a much different viewpoint. When we finally get to the Atreides household, there is a lot to enjoy. Fans of 90s American TV will enjoy seeing Patrick Stewart, Carl McLachlan and Dean Stockwell all sharing a screen. They of course went on to star in Star Trek The Next Generation, Twin Peaks and Quantum Leap. Of these, Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck is by far the most impressive, giving a likeable, natural performance with very little screen time. Carl McLachlan as Paul is sadly a bit miscast. Nowhere near as impressive in this as he would be in Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, though Paul is an extremely complex character in any version, and it would take an incredible talent to do him justice. Around this time we also get to see an impressive sword fight, complete with shields that look computer generated, which is pretty good for 1984. Sian Phillips as the Reverend Mother also appears here, and she's every bit as good as she was in I, Claudius, elevating every scene she's in. Just superb casting. The Harkonnens show up next, and we learn that their planet is called Giedi Prime, which I don't think was mentioned in the new version. Here it's not black and white, but it's a kind of industrial factory planet. Not nearly as distinctive as the new version. Also the Harkonnens are not bald, but they are redheads. And they're all really bad actors, or at least they've been told to overact massively. Kenneth Macmillan is truly grotesque as the Baron, all facial sores and slobber, zooming around on his jetpack and doing disgusting things to young boys. To be fair, you are meant to hate the character, but they probably went too far. And of course, Phaedra Arthur is played by Sting, who is absolutely terrible. And they probably only cast him because he was the only person willing to wear the costume. Eventually, the Atreides do make it to Arrakis, nearly an hour into the movie, so they barely have time to enjoy it before the Harkonnens attack. Villeneuve's version let them spend a good few months there first, and it did feel you got to know the characters and the world much better in that one. The major points of the takeover are the same in both versions, except in this one you do see the Baron spitting in Jessica's face, which was skipped in the new version, and that's probably a good idea. So Paul and Jessica join the Fremen and are immediately accepted. There's no time for any initiations or power struggles, they just fit right in there. Stilgar is played by Everett McGill, who went on to be Ed Hurley in Twin Peaks, and Chani is played by Sean Young. It's a testament to the lack of roles for actresses in the 1980s, that 2 years after Blade Runner, the best you could do is a nothing part like this. Here Chani basically falls in love with Paul at first sight, and that's it. Their relationship in the new version is far superior. The scenes of Fremen battling Harkonnen, which take up most of the new movie, are here reduced to a montage, which also provides a handy 2-year time jump. This does make more sense, as in the new version everything takes place over just a few months, which feels a bit too short. It also means we get to see Paul's sister Alia, played by Alicia Witt, and she is absolutely one of the best parts of the movie, utterly terrifying at a very young age. In fact, it's probably her best performance. The sandworms are also quite impressive for the time. They are presumably models, but look very detailed. But the scenes of people riding on them are not nearly as convincing. The new version definitely has the edge there. Another big change is that in this movie, Paul teaches the Fremen the weeding way, which lets them use sound as a weapon. This is not from the books, but it does work as a shorthand to explain how the Fremen can take down highly trained armies. It's an interesting addition, but doesn't quite work. So we get to the final confrontation extremely swiftly. In some ways it's the better version, Alia taking down Baron Harkonnen is a definite highlight, but Paul's battle with Fade is far more effective in the Villeneuve version. Both films end rather abruptly. This one has Paul terraforming Arrakis to make it rain. There is no mention of deposing the Emperor or marrying his daughter, who in this version isn't really a character, just a narrator. And there's nothing about starting a holy war across the galaxy. It's just an unambiguous happy ending, but you don't really know the characters well enough to feel good about it. So on the whole, it's a bit of a mess, with far too much exposition at the start, and most of the key events in the second half just skipped over. But it's hard to see what else they can do in order to cram the entire story into 130 minutes. It's more faithful to Frank Herbert's writing than the Villeneuve versions, with many distinctive lines of dialogue from the books included, as well as letting us hear most of the characters' thoughts in voiceover, which probably works better in the books. But it is visually stunning throughout, with huge detailed sets and visual effects sequences that were amazing for its time, and the soundtrack is still highly evocative. David Lynch never got to work with such a big budget again, but this is a fascinating glimpse of what he was capable of. As a movie, it's nowhere near as good as Villeneuve's, but as a work of art, it's still well worth seeing. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like this sort of thing. I think it'll probably be a while before I go back to the Dune universe, but it would be interesting to watch the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries again, so I'll probably do that around the time that Dune 3 comes out. And at some point I will get round to rereading the books. Anyway, that's enough from me. See you next time.